Well, sold my Blackmagic Pocket 6K camera on Facebook Marketplace. I think it was gone in about 2 days. Sold it to a local filmmaker. And just last night, I was reviewing some footage from last year that was a mix of Amira interviews and gimbal B-roll on the P6K. And it reminded me as to why I initially invested in this Blackmagic camera. It's because it intercuts and matches the RE sensor really, really well. Like I've shot a bunch of commercials that are a mix of the two cameras, and in the edit, like I have a hard time remembering which camera I shot on which. Now, certainly when you get them side by side, you can see subtle differences in how highlights are handled. The most obvious giveaway is blown out windows, and then skin tones are always just slightly more pleasing on the RE side. Ryan knew I was vulnerable to good deals, so I picked up a second teleprompter. This is the same model I have that's camera mounted, prompter people, the Q Gear style unit, only this one's stand mounted, which is fantastic because I have the equivalent mirror image unit, but that one is with Nick in Orange County, and I think it's just going to live there. So I may send Nick this display, or I actually have another mirror image display I may send to Nick so that I can get back my pick flip, which is daylight viewable. That way I'll have two identical mirrors and daylight viewable monitors for my own kit here in Texas. There's one issue, I don't know if you can see it in the video, the mirror is cracked right here, which is actually above the lens port. So it's not really an issue, but I will order a replacement glass. I actually like to keep a spare on hand because they do just sometimes get broken on set. I just handed off my spare to Nick because his got broken, and they're back ordered, I guess. So yeah, we'll see. If you have this Prompter People unit, a little user hack I picked up years ago from constantly assembling and disassembling. They have these little thumb screws that you have to take off entirely, and then you slide this mirror frame onto the lower frame. But that means you got to lift these in and out, and invariably you drop it because you're wrestling three different pieces. So if you switch to a round thumb screw that's longer, you can attach it from below, and it can remain always attached to the lower unit. You never have to completely remove it. So jumping over here, you'll see that's how I run my other frame. So these just travel like this, and then when I'm building the prompter, all you do is back the screw out so it's flush. Then you can slide the mirror piece on, tighten it up, versus factory is top down, but that means you got to take it out, re-thread it on. The weather here in South Texas has been favorable in the month of February, and I've had a bunch of downtime. So put in the effort to pull down the headliner in my van, drill some holes for recessed lighting, get the carpet glue installed, and then just a continuation of this Home Depot inexpensive carpeting. Simple modification for the Rock and Roller R2. I want a tripod hanger on the nose plate here. So I had some 2-inch scrap mild steel in the garage, cut that down with an angle grinder, and I'm going to just utilize this existing hole that's in the handle for one screw. My thinking is a single nut and bolt there so that I can spin it when it's folded up. So it's not a hook that's going to catch on things. And then here I just kind of eyeballed it with a Sharpie for the depth to hang it on the Zackler sticks. Now that I have a little welding table, I can quickly and spontaneously knock out little projects like this. I used to have to do this on the ground or on a table and then worry about catching a wooden table on fire. But basically the table surface acts as a conductor for one of the leads on, in this case, a stick welder. So you can just clamp your work to it. And here I was running a little too hot, I think. Now I have like no welding skills, but I do know how to use a grinder. So my process here is I weld in the garage to be out of the wind, and then I just roll out to the driveway when I grind so all the shavings aren't going all over the garage and my equipment cases. So you can see that cleaned up nice. I got good penetration on the inside of the corner, but on the outside, you'll see here, I lowered the amps and I wasn't getting good penetration. You can see how there's a seam there where the two plates join. So I really should go over that again, but because the top side's got a good bond, I'm going to be fine. I mean, tripod doesn't weigh a whole lot. Drill press up next. This lives on the floor in my garage, so just gotta move it up to the table, make the one hole to bolt on to the rock and roller. All right, this worked out really well. Now I'm thinking maybe I'll do another hook on the other handle. That way I could potentially transport 2 tripods or maybe a large light stand and a tripod. But you can see here, works great on your standard Sackler sticks. And then with the single bolt, it'll swivel so that when it's folded up, it's not a snagging point in transport mode. Carpet installed on the headliner panels, and I've got my son helping out with the wiring for the recessed, I guess you'd call these can lights. I actually bought these things over 2 years ago. They've been sitting in a box in the garage. Finally getting this all installed. I think I'm going to do little wood strips, like trim pieces of hardwood with a stain or something, maybe a little varnish, just to tie the seams together between the headliners. And then eventually I'll get the side panels installed as well, so I'll have a nice clean transition. And same thing, maybe I'll do a horizontal trim piece to transition. But oh man, the truck is so nice in the dark now with the lights installed, and I'm realizing I should probably put a few more of these lights on the underside of the bunk so that that cargo case area is illuminated. All right, so this rock and roller came with little lock nuts for all the fasteners, and I'd say about half of them have rattled loose and fallen off in the van, so I'm putting Loctite thread locker on all the bolts that remain. And then my touch and go plate, it was a manufacturing flaw on this small rig unit. It didn't have the little dovetail catch on the end of the clasp. It was just squared off at 90 degrees. So I think whoever put mine together, it must have been a Friday afternoon, and they missed that last machining pass. So I was able to eyeball just an angle that roughly matched the camera plate on my angle grinder. Put it back together. Now I did take away a little bit too much material, so there's a little bit of chatter, like too much tolerance between the two pieces when they mate together. But I put all my body weight on that plate, and it's not going to pop out. So next up, I wanted to build this cart out for a one-man band shoot. I've got 3 locations with interviews and B-roll, single camera. This is a local job in San Antonio, so one of the few I'm going to get this year where I get home for dinner. So just filling up a soft bag with all the miscellaneous items that are on my tool chest, because I don't want to bring the tool chest into the locations when I'm working solo. So got one LED panel in there, my audio kit, and a bunch of gold mount batteries to power lights, monitors, camera. And then we're going to be shooting primes, so I built the camera package, lens removed, and then the yellow case has got my new E-mount Sigma primes installed, and then that circular black soft bag on top is the parabolic reflector for the aperture light, which will be my key source. So just putting the things I'm planning to use in the rear door, and I'm going to leave the cart assembled and just load that on the top shelf at the back of the van. All right, I'm 15 minutes early. It's just a retail strip on the side of the 10 freeway. And a little winded, just ran up the stairs and back down, but no one's here yet. I want to get an idea of what the office is like. It's up on the 2nd floor. It's one of those like shared office co-working spaces. So I imagine we're going to be in a conference room or maybe one of those like multi-desk suites. But yeah, I'm going to move the van over, found the elevator, and there's a wheel handicap or ramp right here. So I'm going to park maybe next to that SUV right there. First go with the tripod hanger on the rock and roller. Working great. Cameras on the touch and go. Found a better place to park on the back side of the building, closer to the elevator. All right, I'm learning from the other vloggers. Here's me setting up solo in the dreaded white-walled conference room. This was the only option at location number 1. They had just one piece of furniture, like a credenza thing with a desk on the rear wall, and then they had these 2 frosted glass panels on the side. Now, I have to knock out 4 interviews in this room. Now, the client wasn't particular about having 4 unique looks, fortunately, so we did 2 and 2. 2 looking left, 2 looking right with the same furniture in the background. Now, I was considering the view out the window is bad and too bright. I didn't want to, I mean, I had enough firepower, but it would have been all squinty and miserable for my subjects. And then the glass frosted, I was considering uplighting that with like a color light from outside the conference room, but It's just too ambitious for the time and scope that we had at location 1 of 3. So here's the look with the background. So I basically have their head in the white plain space of frame. And then for the second 2 interviews, I just flop the eye line, pan the camera to the left, so that same thing, just inverted. All right, going back for a few additional items. I'm going to get a black flag for negative fill and to also cut the window spill. It's coming in on my fill side, so 2-in-1 solution, cutting ambient sunlight that's going to get brighter as this fog burns off, as well as putting a little ratio on the face with the black side facing the subject. I'm going to get a second white card to white balance the camera, because I came up in TV versus film, old school. So auto white balance is just my working method. I like to know the camera is balanced to my key source off a white card, and then I can shade from there, light and paint. Oh, and then I'm gonna get some chem wipes to blot faces if needed, because we don't have makeup today. And there are 4 things. Oh, I'm gonna bring up an extra camera battery, white card, flag with a stand, chem wipes. Those are the 4 items. So this is a brand new client for me, first job, and this is a referral from a broadcast news producer I've worked with that we've only worked together fairly recently, but it turns out we're like in the same circles for the same networks for the past over 20 years. So crazy how small the world is. You hear people say that all the time, and it really is the truth. Now, this shoot in particular was like so easygoing because my client, who's the marketing director at this company, is a former broadcast journalist. And then the CEO at the end client, who we interviewed in this room, turns out she's got a legal background, but her brother was a career news photog and in his later years freelancer. And he worked in some of the same circles that I did, just he happened to be out there a decade or more before my time. So what was great about having all these people with broadcast knowledge is this was the antithesis of your typical corporate interview environment. These were interviews that were conducted like they were for air on a deadline. It's like, ask the question, position just right to get the desired answer in a nice soundbite, move on to the next question with a nice structured, proper answer. Once they know they have it once, there's no need to do it again. Move on. New location, new deal. I love it. Once we got up and rolling on this project, I regretted not bringing the Amira. I should have shot this one on the Amira, because new client, we did not have hair and makeup, and it was mostly women, I want to say in their 50s, and the Amira is just the most friendly, forgiving sensor on skin tones. I say it over and over in different video titles, but it really is the truth. It looks good with low effort. But the Sony E-mount lenses and autofocus and small files, we shot AVC-L on this, make just offload easy. I was a little concerned being one-man band and not knowing how long these interviews were going to run, shooting ProRes, and we shot 1080. So I'm sorry, we shot UHD. So UHD ProRes is just brutal. So yeah, it would have been, as it turns out, I probably would have just brought the cards back to my house, offloaded it, and FedExed the drive. So you can see I've got this 6 by whatever it is, high 4 maybe, 5-in-1 reflector. White, I started with black facing subject. I wanted some negative fill for a little more shape and contour. But then once I saw my interview subjects, I realized I got to go with a little bit softer, lower ratio, higher key lighting to make it friendlier on faces. So flopped around to the white side. But that card is mostly serving as a flag, a cutter, to control the ambient light that's leaking through those. Okay, so in addition to the interviews, we had 2 locations of B-roll. They were both laboratories, research facilities, and I shot all of that on the FX3. Now, I didn't have an opportunity to shoot any BTS because I was busy operating the whole time. I was planning to shoot all of that B-roll on the gimbal, but ended up just shooting handheld with the stabilizer enabled, 24-70 for all of it. First location done, 4 interviews. I got 2 more locations to go, so I'm leaving the softbox assembled, and yeah, I'm gonna leave the cart built as well and just throw it up there. This next location was really difficult on the interview side. There just was not a background-friendly area. Now, I did see a nice space, but it was in kind of a public work area with a bunch of staff in the background, which I'm all for. and I pushed them a little bit, but because they're a new client, they weren't really into it at all. So I didn't know how far I could push them. So we compromised with just doing it here in the office. It worked out okay. All right, I'm back at the house, but this is a little recreation of my last setup in the parking lot of the third location. Had to offload footage for clients. So we had one card of interviews on the FX9 and then 2 locations of B-roll on the FX3 CFast Express card. So I went to insert this in my brand new pro grade readers, and the cards don't fit because this is Class A and the readers are B. Now, obviously I didn't realize that until it was time to offload footage. I threw away the boxes like a week ago. So my fault. I just so much clutter in my house. I didn't want to keep a bunch of cardboard around. So now I get 2 readers I can't use. So fortunately I called Ryan. He helped me out. Walked me through how to mount the camera as a drive to offload and connect it over USB-C. It only took a minute to offload my B-roll. Now that I'm running without a mag liner, making modifications to my little rock and roller R2 cart to make it friendly for one-man band productions. So I got my touch and go plate, tripod hook installed, and I figured out I can run a C-stand on the side here, just resting on this caster, but it falls off without a ratchet strap. So I just bent some scrap aluminum I had here at the house. This is 2" by 1/4 inch, correction, 1/8 inch thick. So I just bent this on a vise with a hammer and then drilled a hole in it with the drill press. And now, yeah, I can carry 2 C-stands on the cart, complete, doesn't fall off. That side, the turtle base hooks around the toe plate, so it's not gonna fall off on either end. And the tripod nests nicely in between the two. The only thing I gotta be careful of is it is a shin smasher, so I gotta kind of have my gate split to the side of the cart as I push. This handle's a little low too, but I don't know, maybe I push by the tripod level ground. Not bad for a lightweight little travel cart. And this only adds a small amount of stack height. You can see it's almost flush with the cart when it's folded. I could probably grind these down actually so they're flush and it still has enough contact with the C-stand. Yeah, not bad. We'll try this out next week, see how it goes, and make additional mods from there.